It's my first day here, and it was kind of a surreal moment just walking in Cameron and walking around and getting to meet Coach K and getting to meet everybody here who's a part of the program and in athletics. And the one thing that really stuck out to me was just the family atmosphere that they have here.
Duke basketball returns to action Tuesday night at 7 o'clock against Miami after the drubbing they put on Illinois at Madison Square Garden. A 43-point win for Duke. Can they build on it? Can they maintain it? We will have to see. But first, I think it's important we talk about the news, especially with the team that Duke is about to play, with Jay Lucas looking like the likely next head coach of Miami basketball.
It's it's with mixed feelings that I read it. I've alluded to your saying this is a real possibility in the last two podcasts, and I he is such a good guy. He is so good at spotting talent. He will make a fantastic head coach. And to get an ACC opportunity to do this in this period where all of the ACC coaches are turning over, to have younger guys that are ready to do all the gymnastics that you have to do of figuring out the portal, paying attention to NIL, drafting, recruiting from high school, identifying talent really early. There's so much that has to be done. I wouldn't be surprised that among the first things he recommends to Miami is they create a position of general manager so that it is taken off his back, because Rachel Baker has done an incredible job at Duke. So now, on the other hand, I'm in mourning because I mentioned last time I actually got to meet, and he was my coach when I played at K Academy, and he's just a good guy. He is thoughtful. But I remember, Jack, that you pointed out to me in the years after the 2 years that I wasn't at K Academy, there was some video of Jay Lucas coaching at K Academy. He's insane. He is like, we've got to win this game. I mean, with my team, I think he didn't win. I think we were 0-11 or something.
Well, it's actually worse than that. I don't know if he ended up getting a win, but he definitely went 2 summers without a win. They were making fun of him in the most recent K Academy because I think he went on a recruiting trip and his team won without him. So they didn't credit Jay Lucas for that. So I think he had a rough run at K Academy. But Jay Lucas, he's a tremendous coach. Well before we had this podcast, in his first season, Shire's first season, we both thought he was going to be a head coach someday soon. Like we knew this day was coming, so it wasn't necessarily a shock or a surprise. I guess the surprise would be the location, Miami. But when you think about it, to your point, it makes a ton of sense. Miami's a school with a lot of NIL resources. He also, a little bit different than other Duke coaches who've taken jobs, is the fact that Jay Lucas he's not a Duke guy. He had experience. He was great at Kentucky, where he was the lead recruiter for Shaden Sharp, who didn't play at Kentucky, but he's certainly a very talented player now in the NBA. And Cason Wallace, who's playing in a rotation role for the Thunder now. They have him as a lead recruiter for Cooper Flagg and the Boozer twins. And maybe I'll save some of the conspiracy talk for a little bit later. But the one thing I want to say is that I think it's really unfortunate how Jay Lucas may have to decide based off of when the transfer portal opens what he wants to do and how much pressure Miami's going to put on him, because their season is they're not playing in the ACC tournament. I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that. And the transfer portal opens March 24th. So I'm sure they're going to want him in place before that, ideally. And I get that from their perspective. But we don't care about their perspective over here. This is all about Duke. And Jay Lucas is the defensive coordinator on one of the best defensive teams in the country. It's going to be really important to have him along with Duke for the stretch run here. I think he will stay with Duke and see out the season just based off of the type of person he seems to be. But you never know if they're putting that pressure on him in order for him to take the job. He has to leave early, which would be unfortunate. I think really at the end of the day, this happened with college football. I can't remember the exact player, but there was I think there was multiple players who transferred prior to the college football playoff because that's when the portal opened. And I think the portal shouldn't open until the end of the season. I don't know exactly why it opens on March 24th, but to alleviate this kind of pressure from coaches and from players, if you're the 11th guy on a team going on a late run, the portal opens. Yes, you can enter afterwards, but you may miss out on opportunities. So I don't see the season ends April 8th. I don't see why the portal doesn't open April 9th. I think that's an easy fix. That would make things like this a lot better for the people involved.
Great point. Just a great point. It makes no sense other than if there's some other thing that is involved in the NCAA sports world that we're not aware of that causes it to open that early. Maybe it has something to do with I can't even think of anything because I'm going to say registration at schools or something like that, or the ability to get in the pipeline to help other decisions that flow from who you get in the portal. But what difference really would it make? You're talking in your 15 days.
Exactly. So, all right. The other thing I alluded to earlier is several national college basketball reporters have talked about the fact that since Jay Lucas recruited the Boozer twins, is there a possibility that the Boozer twins decommit and end up at Miami? I'm with you, JD. I don't see any world where that happens. The only thing that they will say is that, a lot of the buzz before they committed to Duke was that they were going to Miami. They're from the Miami area. I don't see it. I have a tough time seeing it, and I am not going to believe it unless it happens, and I don't think it's going to happen.
The only thing I would equate that to would be the end of the movie Any Given Sunday, when Al Pacino decides to leave the school he's coaching, leave the team he's coaching. And at the press conference, he announces that he's taking the star quarterback with him, who initially hated him, but then they formed a bond together and they were going to an expansion franchise. Look, we've debated whether Cooper Flagg could be coming back. If think about it. If the Boozer twins aren't there, he goes on a long run. The money, as you've always said, is so attractive in the NBA, except if you're not the number one pick and the NIL can piece together a package that is so strong, does he stay? But if the Boozer twins, boy, I don't see them. It's funny. I was thinking, is there someone else? I wasn't thinking of the Boozer twins until you mentioned that they had been eyeing Miami, that I thought, obviously, there's somebody going with him. And to your point, if he isn't with Miami, he'll get an assistant coach. They'll be working on the transfer portal on the 24th, whether he's at Duke or at Miami. He'll be working on it because he's not going to go into the year and not take advantage of it. So
The Miami, all right, I think it's a safe assumption, but the Miami roster when Jay Lucas is the head coach at this point, because it's I think the writing's clearly on the wall here. There's enough smoke. Is going to be much better than the roster this year because we know what type of recruiter Jay Lucas is, and then on top of it, we know he's able to find players in the transfer portal like a Sion James. So it's going to be sad, but it's going to be good for the ACC. And that right now is actually very important because there are only 3 teams projected to be in the NCAA tournament from the ACC. So,
Jack, I want to give you a real shout out. The AP poll came out today, and Duke, due to their 2, I think the better word is annihilations row, where they went over 100 points, and wound up they're now the number 2 ranked Blue Devils, and number 1 is Auburn, and it sure we're hoping for the rematch somewhere along the way. But very early in the season, before Clemson and Louisville were ranked in the top 25, you made a point of saying it was going to happen at some point in the season. They've reassembled a much better team. The fact that they were left out of the top 25, and now they're like 13 and 17, I think, in the top 25. And you called that one weeks ago when they weren't even near the top 25.
13 and 19 respectively, and Clemson I didn't understand because they're just good throughout the year. Louisville, I thought they were going to be a tournament team on my preview that I did on them before the season started. Then they lost like 3 or 4 people to injuries, and I was like, well, sometimes you can't win them all, right? Coach Kelsey did a good job with the transfer portal, but that's unfortunate. And then they've just rattled off, I don't know how many in a row at this point, but they are a completely different team. And to that point, I almost wouldn't mind. May sound a little bit crazy here, but I almost wouldn't mind if Duke, loses to, let's say, Wake Forest. I can't get myself to say North Carolina. But hear me out. The reason being is that it would put them on the side of the bracket where they would have to play one of Clemson or Louisville, and then if they were to get to the championship, they would probably play the other one. And the reason I would like that is because you'd get 2 quality tests before the NCAA tournament, and as of right now, you'd maybe get 1. And so I think they would be good for the team as a whole. To be tested a bit more, especially with those 2 teams. Clemson, we obviously want that one back. And Louisville, I just think is a very different team with their confidence than they were when Duke played them. How long ago was it now? A month and a half ago or so? So it's a very different team.
Look, any opportunity to play against quality teams going into March Madness, and we thought there really wouldn't be that within the ACC. And it's funny how it turned out that Illinois was not the team that we thought they were, and that I was highlighting, circle your calendar for February 22nd, due to an injury, due to sickness. They were not quite the team that we expected. But on the other hand, I was not as confident as you that we would wind up with 2 top 25 teams in the ACC. So I couldn't agree with you more. Then let's get the extra reps in against some quality teams before March Madness. So a lot going on here, So take us through Miami's team, and let's, is there anyone we need to pay attention to? What does it look like? Otherwise, I'm already going to say we're going for another 100-point performance.
Okay, we'll wait till after I get done with the roster for how many points you think Miami will get. So Mr. Lucas's future team, I'm sure the roster will look very different, but his future team is, I guess. Not I guess. They're led by Matthew Cleveland, who did not play well, that's a pretty big understatement against Duke the last time around. But in ACC play, he missed the last game, so I'm not 100% certain he will be back for this one. But he's averaging about 20 points a game in ACC play, which is pretty impressive considering there's not a lot of other guys that other teams need to focus on when you're looking at the Miami scout. I feel bad for Matthew Cleveland in that he transferred from Florida State after his first 2 years, and he's been with Miami for these 2 years. So he thought he was coming into a program that had just come off a Final Four run, and instead he's been on a team that's been last in the conference the past 2 years. So probably dramatically different than what Cleveland thought he was going to get when he joined the Miami program. Lynn Kidd is their second leading scorer in conference play, and he played really well against Duke last time. He had over 20 points. Good scoring, big man. He gives up almost or more as much as he scores, which has been my personal gripe with Lynn Kidd. But he can score, and Duke did struggle guarding him last time. Divine Ugochukwu is the point guard for Miami. He was not available when Duke played Miami last time. He's averaging 6 points, 3 assists, and just over one in steal per game. He can get downhill. He's pretty athletic. He was not a highly rated recruit, but he has found a role on this Miami team and could have some potential to develop in the future. Jalil Bethia was a highly rated recruit. He's a top 10 recruit, rated ahead of certainly Isaiah Evans, Khan Knipple, Pat Gangwa, Darren Harris, and he has struggled throughout the season. He's only averaging 7 points and 2 rebounds. So when you have the expectations of a top 10 recruit, you're certainly hoping for more. Obviously, you give him the benefit of the doubt with the current situation of the Miami program, losing Coach Larinaga. It can't be easy. It just can't be easy. So, we'll have to see if he has a bounce back year next year at Miami or maybe elsewhere. Brandon Johnson's a big forward. He's averaging 6 points, 6 rebounds, and a steal in conference play. AJ McCray, 8 points and 3 rebounds in conference play. These are all conference play numbers. I should have said that from the start. Austin Swartz was a top 70 recruit for Miami. He's averaging 5 points, and he's shooting about 36% from 3. And then lastly, Paul Jobay, who's a guy who's around from last year as a 6'7" forward. He's shooting the ball pretty well from 3, 46%, about 7 points, a couple rebounds. Doesn't shoot a ton of them, but when he does, they tend to go in.
So I just scribbled 2 notes that might change a little bit of my thinking about this game. If you were a Miami player and it was announced, it's all but announced, that Jay Lucas, the guy sitting on the other team bench, is about to be your coach, that is a high motivator for you going out and playing 110% of what you could play. In order for Jay Lucas to remember, undermanned, Duke highly favored in the game. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3 guys say, no, we're going to show we have some fight in us. And so that's one thing that occurred. On the other side of the thing is that I think I've got to go back and see how many times we have held the team's leading scorer to below his average. And that is designed, and I'll go back to that play in the very beginning of the Illinois game when the leading scorer on whose name
Yakachonis
was all of a sudden swarmed almost near midcourt by Sion James and Malawach. And that was no accident. Malawach was way out there, like, what are you doing? And they were all over him in an effort to totally disrupt him from the jump.
Boy, does Mal move his feet well. I mean, we've been, it was certainly, I think it was Pittsburgh when he was guard. That's the first time where it was like, man, is he good guarding on the perimeter? But for a guy who's 7'2" and like Lively isn't much shorter, but I feel like Mal has like 30 pounds on Lively when he was at Duke, maybe more. He moves really well out on the perimeter. And yeah, I think that's a very good point that these Miami guys, I mean, it sounds weird to say, but I'm going to say it anyways. They're fighting for jobs,
Yeah.
And now that people are getting paid, that's really what it is. Um, Obviously, some of these guys, like I think Lynn Kidd and I believe Matthew Cleveland, they're going to be out of eligibility along with a few other players. So it won't really matter for them. But for the rest of the guys, especially the freshmen, if they want to stick around in Miami, they've got something to show in this game, and we know that matters because one of the reasons Duke went out and got Malik Brown was because he scored like 25 points somewhere thereabouts against Duke, and they're like, we gotta get this guy, and now he doesn't score at all, and he's still awesome. So all that stuff does matter, and I think in terms of the Duke side of things, I think this is a good game to get Caleb Foster into the game in the first half. I think 2 of the last 3 games he scored in double figures in basically garbage time minutes, and I think this is an opponent where it's a good opportunity to get him into the rotation in a part of the game where it's meaningful.
I think that's a great observation because both times he scored the 10 plus points. I think it was 12 and 10 or something like that. Absolutely, it was garbage time, and yet so he had open threes, and he hit them, which is a confidence indicator. I was concerned about his turnover or so. So you would like to put him in a higher pressure situation before you get even to the ACC. So I think that it's a good idea to do that.
It's a nice step up, going from garbage time to, I mean, call it how it is against Miami where they're 6-21. You're not going from garbage time to the middle of the North Carolina game, for example, right? So it'd be a nice ramp up for Caleb Foster here.
And along those lines, since there's no sign of Malik Brown anytime soon, Gangba should also get minutes early. And I don't think it's too much of a risk here. I think we beat him by 35 in the game at Cameron. So, let's take 10 points off of that, or so they're at home. The news of losing Jay Lucas may be a little disruptive. So as we're talking, I'm adjusting the score of the game in my head. So do you want me to go? You want me to go first?
Sure. Make sure before you go, make sure to drop in the comments your score predictions for the Duke versus Miami game. Go ahead, JD.
Look, they're coming off of 2 just explosive offensive performances where they were over 100 points, which is just phenomenal. Do they do it a third time, which I said in the beginning, and I was serious, and now we've had a really good discussion about it. I think something's going to happen here. I'm at 85-72. And wow. I think that it's because how we always say, there are trap games or things, and that there's no reason why Duke shouldn't beat this team by 100-60. There's just no reason. And that's exactly when we're wrong, or I'm wrong. So I got it at 85-72, an incredible home court effort in front of their new coach. So
Okay, that's fair. Very close on the score. I did not change my score, but I also didn't reveal what it was going to be at the start of this video. I had Duke 84 points, so we were almost identical there. But a little bit of a difference on Miami side. I got them at 60. And I hear what you're saying, but Duke's defense, while the offense may come down to earth a little bit in this game, I think Duke was motivated for that game against Madison Square Garden against Illinois, and they're just not going to be quite as motivated unless the players on Duke, say to Jay Lucas, kind of send a message to him. As much as the players on Miami are trying to send a message, say like, "Hey, I want to be a part of this." Maybe the players on Duke are like, "This is what you're going to leave," and they go out and score 100 points again, right? So I guess there's a world where that works both ways to an extent.
Well, in the post game interview where Shire brought both Cooper Flagg and Sion James to be part of it, the first thing that both of them, and maybe it's due to the question that was asked, how did you feel about playing in Madison Square Garden? It was the first time that Cooper and Sion had ever played there. And they both said that John Shire had said, guys, you're going to see a lot of blue in the fans and among the fans. And they both said it was great. Now, you and I kid about it, and a lot of people have also used the expression as it's Cameron North, and yet it's a home game.
Unless Duke's playing St. John's, because we've been there when the tide turned. In the first half, it felt like a Duke arena, but once St. John's got the lead, and the reason I bring that up is because the next day was St. John's UConn, and it's the same thing for UConn typically when they're at Madison Square Garden. I don't remember the name of their home court, but it's typically a home game for UConn, but not when they're playing Gamble. That sounds right. Yeah. But not when you're playing St. John's, especially when St. John's is playing well. Madison Square Garden, that is their home court. So,
Jack, where did they come out? Number 7?
7. Yep, them. So, them and Michigan State are two teams I think are real dark horses. Obviously, St. John's defense is unbelievable. They are a ton of fun to watch. And Michigan State, typically at this time of the year, they are unranked and starting to work their way back.
You've called this every year that somehow Coach Izzo, it doesn't matter where they're ranked in the beginning of the year, they're somehow going to get ranked, then they're going to get overrated in terms of seeded, is how I then go from there, because I don't know how good they are, but they're ranked in the top 10 now.
Right, and that to me is a sign that they are much better than the typical Michigan State year of late, where they kind of sneak back into the rankings and they maybe win a game or two in the NCAA tournament. So I think this is at least a Sweet 16 Michigan State team, which Duke has played a lot in the NCAA tournament. So that could be another matchup to look out for. The one thing I want to go back to is in that press conference with Cooper Flagg and Sion. It was very apparent to me that Cooper Flagg is having a lot of fun right now. I don't know if you got that same impression from watching it, but he looks like he's really enjoying himself playing at Duke and just everything that's going along with Duke basketball. And Sion James, he's given the very professional answers, and it was very funny. They asked the question, I forgot what the question was, but they asked it to both Sion and Cooper. And Sion gave it, the guy, as they say, he could run for senator if he wants to. Like, he's very well spoken. He went to Tulane and now Duke. I think the guy's a pretty intelligent man. And he gave a great answer, right? Very professional. They asked Cooper, anything you want to add? Nope, that was a great answer.
Well, Cooper, there's a lot been written about the fact that he's not a man of many words, that he just lets his court play speak for itself. And that is another reason he is such, for me, it's such a joy to watch. I will amend the statement that I made earlier in the season with regard to he's not a celebrating kind of player.
Okay.
Let us say on occasion, for emphasis, he thinks it's time to let it out. But in general, he is not a celebrating player. He just goes out there, not the way that players are today. You know, you don't see him doing Steph Curry's nighty night. You see him going out there and it's usually following a slam dunk that he's trying to psych everybody up. So
And when he does that, it's typically like towards the Duke bench, so he's trying to get them going. And my favorite is actually it tends to be when someone else makes a play when he's at his most like excited, or he's part of the play but he's celebrating the other guy in the play. So two examples come to mind with that. One is in the North Carolina game when he gets the and one, but Malik had just checked in, gets the steal, and once they're huddled up, he shoves Malik Brown and he's like, "Let's go!" But there's a word in between which I won't say for YouTube purposes, and he's really amped up. And the other one is when he threw the alley oop to Malawach in the Illinois game. He was like screaming at Malawach, like, "Let's go!" Like pushing him in his chest, like really getting him going. So he's a ton of fun to watch, and I think this is a great segue for me because I'm not to close this out. I have one more thing I want to get into. Yeah, one more thing because I've been sitting on this for a while, and I was debating when I wanted to say it, and I feel like it's time. In the beginning of the season, there's a lot of talk Cooper Flagg, his comp. There was a lot of they would compare him to a lot of, let's say, players of the same skin tone. And I think as the year has gone on, there's a lot like Andre Karolinko. Some people would I don't even know why, but I heard some like Gordon Hayward. It was a little bit strange. But Karolinko was more for the defense. I'm at the point where, and I said this to you in December, where I said, you look at a guy like Kevin Durant, his numbers aren't the same. I don't know if he's that kind of guy. But since then, his numbers, since he turned 18, they're the same. My comparison for Cooper Flagg, which is crazy for me to say out loud, and it's probably why I've debated saying this, but I feel comfortable with it now, is LeBron James. I think it's not 100%, but there's so many boxes that Cooper Flagg checks that are similar to LeBron when he started. He's not quite as explosive or as athletic as LeBron, but he sees the floor really well. He's a really good passer, Cooper Flagg, like LeBron. Maybe not quite as good. He's not quite as big, but like LeBron was probably 15, 20 pounds bigger at the same age. But they both at 6'8", 6'9", command the game. They do a lot, without necessarily showing up on the stat sheet. They're really smart, intelligent players. They, especially LeBron when he was younger, they're great defenders. I think Cooper is ahead of where LeBron was at the same age on that side of the ball. And I think there are enough similarities. It's not perfect, but there's enough similarities where if there's anybody who I would compare Cooper to, it would be that. It would be LeBron, which is, again, crazy. It feels crazy for me to say that out loud, but every time I try to think of somebody else, I don't think it does Cooper justice. And I don't know if this is apparent, but I'm all in on Cooper Flagg. I think it should be by now.
The only thing missing is what would you have tattooed on your back? LeBron's already the chosen one, so.
Right. I don't know if Cooper's the tattoo kind of guy, but I guess that could always change.
It could, because I remember Tatum really wasn't tatted up at Duke. He may have had one or two, and now look at him in the NBA.
True. The other thing with Cooper that I think is very similar is some of the criticism. With LeBron, there was a ton of criticism on him early on in his career, and it went on for a few years about him not being clutch. He wasn't clutch. You know, he couldn't make the shot late in the game, etc. And with Cooper, there was a lot of that criticism early in this year, and then it came back in the Clemson game. And I mean, if you watch the Clemson game, I don't know how that could be a criticism, but a lot of people, it's just, I feel like people just like to jump on the bandwagon. And so I think that's another area of similarity between the two. I don't think it's perfect, but I think there's enough there that it makes sense to me.
Look, as we love to say, since we are rabid Duke fans, haters hate. And I was at a meeting today where someone introduced me and they said, he's a Knick fan. We love that. He's a Yankee fan. We love that. And then they go, but he's a Duke fan. And everybody in the room was like, Duke, ugh. And they had names for Duke. You know, it is true that the people that they're just the majority of the country doesn't love Duke. We don't care. Duke is just able to bring a quality product to the court year in, year out. And sorry, the rest of the world, that you're not Duke.
Sorry. And I mean, I get that you're in New York, but I tend to think of Duke and the Yankees as relatively synonymous, except Duke has had a little bit more success of late. Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think. When's the last time the Yankees even won a title? You know, 2009, somewhere in there.
15 years ago, I think, or 16 years ago, and it's not going to be this year. The injuries are already mounting in spring training.
That's a good way to end. That's a good way to end. With that, we will see you guys post game after Duke beats Miami on Tuesday night. Should be around 9 o'clock, a little bit after 9 o'clock Eastern time. We'll be live. Make sure to join us for the show. Drop a comment. What do you guys think about this game? A lot of stuff to talk about in college basketball. Drop your score predictions. This will be available on Apple and Spotify podcasts as well. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Drop a like. It helps us grow. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.